about now is the iconic relationship between Springsteen and Clarence and what it did for the rest of music, for the rest of life. Now, this is funny. If there's one takeaway you remember from this, just one, is that it redefined how the saxophone would be used in rock and roll for at least the next 50 years. Okay. So I'm downstairs at breakfast, and I was talking to this guy, and he's telling me about what he's going to talk about. Oh, that's really interesting. He says, well, what's your talk going to be about? I said, well, I'm going to talk about the impact this album had on the saxophone and rock and roll for the next 50 years. To myself, ta-da. His wife looks at me and she says, that is oddly specific. Well, oddly specific it is. Here's where we're at. We're looking at the pre-Born to Run era, Born to Run, the songs, the styles, the symbolism, and then what happened with the legacy. But here's where we are. This was called the Devil's Horn for many, many years. And it was invented in France by Adolphe Sax in 1846. And for 100 years, basically, for about 50 years, all it was a military band instrument. Because you could play it really fast, like woodwinds, like clarinets and flutes. But it had the projection of brass. That's all it was used for until the 1920s, when somehow it must have gotten on a slow boat over to the United States, and it came here, and things erupted. The whole jazz explosion here was dominated by the saxophone for a while. Then it became part of big bands. When the big bands sort of died out because of the cost after World War II, it became a big part of R&B. And it was a centerpiece of R&B other than the vocalists. Until rock and roll happened. And by goodness, it was the king of rock and roll. In the late 50s, of all the top 40 songs that came out in a typical year, 66 of them had a saxophone solo in them. But from 1960 to 1970, it dropped to the point where it's just a cliche and it was just a joke. And you say, well, there's exceptions. I mean, in 1971, there was Sticky Fingers with the Rolling Stones, and Bobby Keys played on that. That was great. True, that was really great. At the same time, the better-known song through all of Europe was Yakety Sax, because of the Benny Hill show. You guys know what that song was? Okay. There's Benny Hill. And you say, yeah, but there's a Dark Side of the Moon. My guy Dick Perry did all those great sax things on there. It's like, yeah, that's true. I mean, Dick Perry only played in 2 Pink Floyd albums. They made a bunch of them, but they only had them in 2 albums. It's true, the 1970 album, he was great in 1971. But 2 years later, what was the most popular song? This Ringo Starr did a song called Photograph. You know, all you got is a photograph to remind me that I'm back anymore. And they asked people that year what their favorite saxophone solos were. And some people did say, Brown Sugar, some people probably said, Us and Them or something. But a lot of people said that it was the saxophone solo on Ringo Starr's Photograph. Except that wasn't even a saxophone solo. Well, I don't say something to do. So that's a sad state of where this is.
What about early Bowie? Didn't early Bowie use sax?
Yeah, he did play alto sax and Young Americans and things like that. Yeah, that's true. Like I said, there's some exceptions. And here's what happened though. We went from 66 top 40 songs in 1959 that had saxophone solos on, down to 9 in 1971, and maybe Young Americans was one of them. This hit an all-time bottom here. In fact, it happened to see it drop 86% in 12 years. That was the state of the art of the saxophone before Born to Run. Okay, what happened? There's Chuck Berry and his being very friendly with the audience there. What happened is guitar. It's a hollow body guitar in the 50s, in solid state, the Fenders. After that, they were very popular. That was the dominant solo instrument. Until, here's the album right there. So what happened? Born to Run changed things for the saxophone. huge visibility and a huge sax presence. If you look at the first 10 albums of Bruce Springsteen, none of them had more than a third of the songs that had saxophone. Some of them had none, except for Darkness on the Edge of Town and Born to Run, which had 6 out of the 8 songs had saxophone solos. Okay. So it changed things. It changed things for 3 reasons: the songs, the style, the saxophone that was used, and the symbolism. The solos are very deliberate. It wasn't just turning Clarence loose and letting them play, but they were very deliberate. Now, who saw the movie on Friday night? I know we saw it, yeah? You guys? Oh, it was super cool. It was really cool. But the thing is, they were showing the early stages in the studio playing Jungle Land. And that Clarence's solo that we know is classic. The solo he played in the studio, not classic at all. Sounded like most rock and rollers. He's kind of playing some standard pentatonic stuff. He's doing some sort of riffs. It's not melodic. He doesn't fit with things. And Born to Run, when things were released, those were studied, almost orchestrated solos that came out. But not only that, there were also treatments that were done. And the treatments, typically just a small little solo that's repeated and things like this. But the treatments were just super iconically basic. The first time I heard the saxophone in Born to Run, it made me want to play a saxophone, even though I was unfortunately playing a French horn at the time. When my daughter says, yeah, that explains a lot. But the first thing I heard was Thunder Road. And you know, the first time you hear the saxophone, the entire song is toward the end when it goes, da 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 da. We're talking a 3-note solo, adding one more note. And kind of thought, oh my God, this is incredible! This adds so much. But it wasn't a jazz person doing runs and trills and pretending to John Coltrane. It's a guy being super deliberate and playing things that were orchestrated to make that song work. Same way as She's the One. Da 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 da. Those are 2 notes right there. Da 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 da. That's all that was. Fifth Avenue Freeze Out, the same thing. Very simple things that were built to add to those songs. So these are his popular songs. I took the 50 most downloaded Springsteen songs on Spotify and a few other different things. And number 3 was Born to Run. Number 12, Thunder Road. Some King, 10th Avenue Freeze Out. But these are down. There wasn't Spotify in 1975. There wasn't Spotify in 1985 or 95 or 2005. These are things that were downloaded in retrospect because of the impact of the song, not because they were trendy. 5 of the 6 songs that had saxophone in are in this top 50. Anybody want to guess what number 2 or number 1 was? The most downloaded songs? I think I could have guessed one of them. I would never have guessed the other one. Oh, no, what is it? Yes, you're right. That's number 1 by a magnitude. Okay, and second was Born in the USA. Very good, very good. Well done. The style then, we went from solos and treatments versus what typically were the solos, used the saxophones before there, which are just improvs and fills. You know, somebody kind of saying, hey, can you play a solo over this? It's like, yeah, I'll step in, I'll play a solo. I'll take my check and I'll leave, and you can finish the song while I'm on my way out. And then fills, which are less deliberate. So, you know, people going, you know, da 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 da, you know, instead, very deliberate. The best example is Thunder Road, She's the One, which I talked about. But also, there was an idea of trying to complement the guitar versus to compete with it. It wasn't like, well, we're going to have a guitar solo from the saxophone or from guitar. But it didn't really matter because the way Clarence played these things, it actually made the guitar the hero, it made the singer the hero. And somebody said this to me one time, and it wasn't Clarence who said it, but he talked about the impact Clarence had on him as a player. He said, if I always make the singer or guitar player look good, I'll always have a band. Nobody ever said that before Springsteen-Clemons came along that I know of. It was all about them. And last, the symbolism. Clarence was larger than life. Bruce was known as being really precise and a perfectionist. I like your term, high maintenance and low budget. It's good. The sax is deliberate, pay attention to it. That's effectively what he's saying by putting a saxophone on 3/4 of the songs in that album. Sax is here for a reason. I just didn't find this guy, off the side of the street. Pay attention to it. Then it had cultural symbolism. It had the brotherhood, the bonding and healing, and that was an issue at the end of the Vietnam War and some of the civil stuff that was going on. I love this. I don't know if you ever heard this guy. He's called the Professor of Rock. He's got a video podcast or video cast. He's super entertaining. I really like him. But he was talking about the best covers of all rock covers of all time. I think this is number 2. Number 1 was Pink Floyd's Dark Side of the Moon. But he said about this: the cover told you everything you need to know before you listen. Born to Run, 7 times platinum in the U.S., and Bruce believed the cover was instrumental, saying it was one of those records that you didn't have to hear. When you saw the cover, you said, "I want that one." Amen. And it's been parodied dozens of times. This is the power of the symbolism of this album. A couple of my favorites right here. There's the Flintstones right here. But you remember the Sesame Street was born to add. Okay, we have Ernie here, or Bert, I guess it is. And something going on here. And then if anybody's ever seen Car Talk, they did a great one. And their promotion is called Car Talk, Born Not to Run. But this brings up a very important thing. There's something that my band did to kind of just do a little congratulation, just did it kind of fun. I actually found the same saxophone that Clarence is playing for this photo here. But an interesting thing about that is when we did this thing, I showed it to the other people. I think that's important to keep in mind because we are with the fanatics of the fanatics. Those conferences. We have to realize how fortunate we are about that. But they just think they like the photos. They're just, I never heard the guy album. Not familiar. Jesse's Girl. So the legacy of Born to Run, sax solos usually rebounded. Clarence inspired parts of a generation. And some of Springsteen's most iconic songs came out of that album. Let's take a look at this. Bands hired full-time saxophone players after this. Billy Joel, he had great albums. Piano Man album. Saxophone on it? No! Next album? Yes. He hired Richie Canada, and Richie played with him for 15 years. Right after he heard this, he hired a saxophone player. Bob Seger, Night Moves, like maybe 74, 75, about the same time. No saxophone on it. This came out. He hired Alto Reed. Alto Reed was with him until he died like 5 years ago. George Thorogood came up with his first album, sold extremely well, one of his best-selling albums. No saxophone on it. This came out. He hired Hank Carter to be with him. This happens over and over and over. NXS did the same thing. Supertramp did the same thing. And the idea was, you want a hit, you get a sax. There's this cool story of you know the song Jerry Rafferty song, ba da 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 da, Baker Street song, da 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 da, iconic sax solo, and over and over. He didn't want it on there, but what happened is that Al Stewart, who did the Year of the Cat, Year of the Cat, and Time Passages and things like this, had a saxophone and all these things. He told Jerry Rafferty, he says, if you want that to be a hit, you have to have a saxophone. And that became some of the parlance of what was going on here. Bands filled the sax as an MTV hit. Here's what happens to the rebounding of the number of songs, sax solos in top 40 music. It hit a bottom in 71. Here's where Springsteen came out. Went up, and it continued for 15 years. That ride continued until 15 years till hip-hop and rap and things like that started coming out. So Clemons inspired many, many people to play saxophone, to join bands even if they sucked. Because if they realized that if they could complement a guitar player, they could complement a singer, which they could do with things like da 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 da. They didn't have to be John Coltrane. They could be themselves. Because them encouraged them to dress up, to act out, and to practice a lot more. It also created many yes.
Well, you said it continued till 1990, right? And that's about the time that Bruce took his break for like, what, 10 years or something? Do you think that played a part, that he wasn't putting out a lot of new music at that point with the Sax?
I think I heard you right. It rose pretty much until about early 90s and things like this, and then it just started not showing up as much for a couple of different reasons. One being a lot of the parts that were played were all of a sudden being played with synthesizers when the Yamaha came up with the synthesizer. And saxophones are expensive to hire because they're hard to get along with. And they're easier using a synthesizer. You can use 2 or 3 or 4 different takes. And that contributed to what's going on. Like if you know the song, it's got a cookie line, I'm in love with Monster, you know, I'm in love with the Monster. It's got a lick that just goes boom, 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 boom. And it repeats, it's really catchy, it's a synthesizer. And if you went there, a lot of things happened, like rock, in addition to economics, rap music became popular, hip hop became popular, grunge became popular, and none of those were vehicles for the saxophone like it had happened earlier. But here's what this had done for Springsteen. 21% of his 50 most downloaded career songs, 21% of all the songs he recorded in studio had saxophones in it. But 34%, 50% more, of the 50 most downloaded songs all saxophone. Born Run had 6 saxophone songs. 5 of them ended up in the top 50 downloaded songs that Springsteen had. Born to Run by the Road, Freeze Out, Chug Away, and She's the One. So Clemons redefined the sax world in rock history. He could now share the stage with guitars, he could change mood more than other instruments, he could elevate a vocalist, and it could become the glue that bonded a band together. So the one takeaway, remember that the saxophone he used changed the way rock was used for 50 years. Questions, and I want to special thanks to Ken Womack for getting me here, and for my wife for driving, because I had injured my back, and they told me I couldn't drive. My wife said, forget it, I'm canceling things, we'll drive you 6 hours. Thank you very much.